The new Shrapnel build is here where you never have to reload. Like ever. So I watched about 6 different Shrapnel build videos today to work out how to do this, and I tried to replicate their results and had not much luck. And I quickly realized I didn't really have the knowledge in how to put together builds in one's human. So I spent the day looking at that with the Shrapnel build as an example, and all the different things that you need to stack upon each other to actually hit some of those numbers that you're seeing on a YouTube short or a TikTok, and you watch someone take out a level 50 boss in like 30 seconds, and you try to do it, and you're like, what? I'm not getting anywhere near those numbers. So we're going to talk about calibration, how do you read stats, weapon mods, armor mods, where to find them, where to farm them. I've got once human map genie. I've also got an Excel document to share with you, which shows you where you can farm different mods for your builds. This was actually from Doomerous. I'll link their channel down below. Like I said, I watched a bunch of videos today and kind of collated all the best advice into one. Cooking, Deviants, Cradle, the type of ammo you're using, all these things are super important to reach those kind of damage numbers that you're probably seeing online and you're trying to work out how to replicate. And we're going to use the Shrapnel build to do that today as an example. Right. First things first, starting way back at the beginning, you're going to need an advanced gear workbench. The reason why is you need to be able to craft a tier 5 weapons, right? Tier 5 right at the bottom here. Not only because that increases your damage, but more importantly, well, actually not more importantly, equally important is something to do with calibration attributes. So this weapon is already 10 out of 10. It's already calibrated. But when you get your weapon, it will look something like this. It will say 0 out of 10. And you have to spend some materials to calibrate it. And you'll see here there are attributes down here, +4, +7, +10. When I calibrate this 4 times, the +4 will open up and I'll get range +12 and I'll get accuracy. When I get to 7, I'll get weak spot damage. When I get to 10, I'll get crit rate. Now, the thing that a lot of channels haven't mentioned is you can replace these. You click on replace calibration attributes and you have to select some other ones. How do you get these? Interesting you ask. You have to go over to your disassembly bench and you put in loot you found on the ground, and you'll see this little green icon here. It says dropped gear. And when you dismantle this, you actually get this mod, this blueprint. So this is a rapid assault blueprint, and you can see it will give fire rates, weak spot damage, and weak spot damage. So if I wanted a weak spot build, this is the weapon I have to go out into the world and farm, get, dismantle, and then I can come back over to my workbench and I can actually put those attributes onto this weapon. Now, for this assault rifle, we actually do want crit damage and we do want crit rate. I've actually already put this on here. Okay. Right. So that's the first thing, is understanding calibration, tier 5 weapon, and I would, for this build, have crit damage and crit rate on it. The next thing to know is in your menu, in your gear menu, there is details. You can actually see your crit rate, your crit damage, and all these kind of details in here. Now, the important thing to note is it depends what you are holding at the time, including if your weapon is holstered. Right now, my weapon is holstered. Oh, now it's out. You'll see, I don't know if you noticed that or not, you'll see that it changes. So I'm at crit rate 40% and crit damage 130% when I'm holding the last Valor. Now, if I actually holster that, and then I open that menu again, you'll see that now the crit rate's 30% and the crit damage is 84%. So it depends on what you are holding in your hand. If you're trying to test stuff and you keep seeing this change, it's probably because you've accidentally holstered the weapon or you've changed another weapon and the stats are changing. Okay. The next thing we need to talk about is weapon mods and armor mods. So, in general, you right click on this, left click to change the weapon mod. And these are legendary weapon mods with the gold and purple. And I'll show you how to farm these when we get to the actual build. But what you need to understand with mods is that they have these attributes on them as well. So similar to your gun, they also have attributes. And these are randomly distributed on mods. This is kind of the grind that you do, is like, if you want to get the Shrapnel Souvenir, you want these to be the correct stats on it. And once you've got the correct stats on your mod, you can enhance it using weapon mod parts. Tells you where you get them from. Disassembling weapon mods, you can get weapon mod parts. You also get weapon mod parts just from doing silos, and I think you get them from bosses too. So you can collect weapon mod parts. And what this will do, it will randomly pick one of these to level up. You know what? I'll do it here just so you can see. So currently this is blue and this is green. Green, I think like gray is the lowest, then it's green, and then it's blue. And this is crit damage 9%, max HP, whatever. We're gonna enhance. Spend mod parts, energy links to enhance this mod. Will upgrade one random attribute rarity within this mod. Okay, confirm. Oh, perfect. Okay, so that's exactly what I wanted. It upgraded crit damage to now 12%. And now it's purple. Cool. It's an enhanced mod. So not only are you looking for the right mod, but also the right mod with the right stats on them for your build, and then enhancing those stats. And this also applies to your gear. You right click on it too, and you can also enhance your gear as well. Okay. The next big sort of damage buff will come from your armor and set bonuses. So for example, this Falcon mask is part of the Falcon set, and you can see that I've got 3 pieces, the 3 green pieces, and it unlocks depending on that. So I get rolling stamina cost negative 20%. I get crit damage, and when stamina is over 90%, increase crit rate by 5%. And if I had a 4th bit of Falcon gear on, I'll get the last perk as well. So it's not always beneficial to have the entire set, because you might not need the entire set. So for example, I've got 3 pieces with the Falcon, and then I've got 2 pieces with the Scout, because the Scout gives me max HP and weapon damage. And then I've got another piece on that has a special unique effect, which is specific for Shrapnel as well. So you've got set bonuses, and you also got some gear that have unique effects as well. Then you need to consider cooking. Cooking is huge. This is a big part of your DPS and your end game. A good example is canned meat, especially for a shrapnel build. Just using this increases your character's shrapnel damage by 20% for 30 minutes. So cooking is a big part of it. You need to start farming, making your own little farms. Now, the way that the buffs work for cooking, you can have 1 food buff and 1 drink buff at a time. I'll even just use something right now so you can see. What you need to look at is down here with your drink is and your stomach is. And when you consume something that does that, so this is canned meats. This is going to give increased shrapnel damage by 20%. If I press F on this and use it. Oh, my camera's blocking it. Good one. Right, over here, this little thing here is the buff. Right there, it says I got it for 30 minutes. That little dagger there is the canned meat. Now, if I have a drink, do I have anything that's going to give me a buff for the drink? Not on me right now. That would go there. And if you drink something else or eat something else, it actually overrides it. So you can only have 1 food and 1 drink buff at a time. The next thing we need to talk about is your deviants. These are a huge part of your damage as well. A lot of people are using this one here, the Lone Wolf's Whisper, mainly because it gives you increased weapon damage. Once again, my camera's covering it. Increased weapon damage received by the attacker by 21%. So straight up 21% buff. So that's why a lot of people are using that one too. But also consider that people are using deviants when they're showing how much damage they're doing, and that could be buffing their damage. Of course, your ammo type also massively impacts your DPS. And interesting thing to know when you start getting to the tungsten or the AP rounds, is you can actually swap out this middle one and it will change the attributes. So at the moment, with using Stardust, it deals 10% more damage to targets affected by burn and frost. But I actually want the one for shrapnel. So if I actually select the electronic parts, triggering shrapnel, bounce or bullseye increases attack by 10% for 3 seconds. So every time I trigger shrapnel, I'm going to get an extra 10% just for using this ammo. So ammo is obviously something that also improves your DPS. These are all the things that I kind of wasn't doing. Like when I was watching these videos, I was just kind of copying the gear and some of the mods and then like wondering why I wasn't getting anywhere near their kind of damage, right? And the last thing to do is in the Cradle. You click over the right hand side, click on Cradle. These things are also important for getting damage. Like a big one is tactical combo. You get a weapon damage of 25% just by switching weapons or reloading for 4 seconds. It's like straight up, that's really, really good. After hitting a weak spot with bullet effects like shrapnel, bullet effect damage by 25% for 3 seconds is another really good one for the build we're doing today. So another way that they bump up the DPS. So it's not just about the gear and the weapons and the mods. It's about your calibration. It's about your armor set bonuses. It's about cooking, drinking, eating, your deviants, type of ammo, and your cradle. Right. Let's apply all of that now in the Shrapnel build. Let's start with how Shrapnel actually works. So the last value reads a 4% chance to trigger Shrapnel with a hit, and crit hits count as 2 hits. And crit hits also grant Shrapnel trigger chance +1 for 1 second, and then Shrapnel crit damage plus 30%. It is a little bit confusing, but it basically boils down to the more crits you get, the more chances of triggering Shrapnel you have. So you just want to basically have a really high crit rate. So that's why you want your crit rate as high as you possibly can, because it's going to trigger more shrapnel. And obviously if you're triggering a lot of criticals, you're going to want a lot of crit damage as well. So you're building into crit rate, you're building into crit damage. I'm going to talk about weak spot damage in a second, and that's from another YouTuber called Thick Filler, and weapon damage bonus as well. So the main 3 ones for this build is crit rate, crit damage, and weapon damage bonus. And that is how Shrapnel works. Now, the other thing you need to know is when you actually go in here, you can press X and see the keywords. And this is pretty important too, because it says upon hitting an enemy with a bullet, deal weapon damage of 50% attack to a random unit part. And it says it can be a crit, a weak spot, or it can be a crit or a weak spot. Okay, so the shrapnel can be a crit and it can be a weak spot, or it could be one or the other. What that means is when you're actually shooting stuff, it spreads to other body parts. So if I shoot the body, the shrapnel is spreading to the other parts, which includes the head, which is the weak spot on the dummy. Oppositely, if I shoot the head, it will spread to the other parts of the body. So it spreads down here. Now, for this specific build, it actually involves weak spots. You'll notice if I shoot the body, I've got infinite ammo. Well, I don't have to reload. If I shoot the head, I run out of ammo and I have to reload. So that's like one important thing to note with this. And so the reason why the gun is reloading is because of the weapon mod, Shrapnel Souvenir, which says when a shrapnel hits a weak spot, automatically refill 1 bullet from the inventory. That's why when you shoot the body and shrapnel hits the weak spot, which is the head, it reloads. And when you do the opposite, when you shoot the head, shrapnel's hitting the body, so it's not reloading. Okay? And where do you find that? How do you farm for that? Well, that's when you bring up this document. I'll leave this link down below. This was from Dumerus. They left an Excel spreadsheet in their video. And man, there's not a good place for my camera. I always seem to be blocking something. Right, if you look at this, weapon mods drop from monolith bosses, and they drop very specific mods. So if you're after shrapnel stuff, you'll see down Shadow Hound Hards is the level 50, and it drops weapon mods for shrapnel and bounce. So we're doing a shrapnel build, and we need a shrapnel mods. So if you want this, you need to go farm the Shadow Hound on hard. Now, it also says here, Shadow Hound can drop all weapon mods. So if you can't quite do level 50 yet, or you don't have a team to do level 50, you can do it on normal to farm it, but you're going to have reduced chances because it drops all the mods. Okay? The other mod that's been paired with your weapon mod to reload your gun is actually on your mask, and it's called Shrapnel Carnage Precision. And it says Shrapnel Weak Spot Hit Weight plus 100%, Shrapnel Weak Spot Damage plus 25%. My interpretation of this is when you shoot something and the shrapnel randomly spreads to other body parts, this is influencing that shrapnel to hit the weak spot. Shrapnel weak spot hit weight plus 100%. And so I believe it guarantees if you do a body shot, that shrapnel is going to spread to the weak spot, which is why you're seeing red numbers pop up there, and that's going to reload your weapon. So those two things together are working to basically reload your gun the entire time. And where do you farm these mods? So the weapon mods come from the monoliths, but the armor mods come from silos. And if you hover over silo, you'll see the mods. So for example, this one gives shoes. You see on the left hand side it has shoes. We find another silo. There's got to be another one down here. This one gives chest. And find another silo. There's one down here somewhere. There is. This one gives a mask. Now, to get the legendary version, you just need to increase the difficulty like level 50 and it will drop. If you can't do that yet, just farm the lower level, get the mod you want and slowly work your way up or find a team. So that's how you farm your armor mods. The other thing you can do to complement this build is have the recurve crossbow. And once again, you can farm this, you can find this, go over to your blueprints, click on crossbow. I actually tell you where to find it. For example, I've already got it, so it doesn't say here, but when you hover over it and you haven't got it, like this one says recurve bow, how to get obtained from mystical treasures discovered from exploring the broken delta. So basically just go find the mystic crates in that area, and that will drop the blueprints for this. So you can actually just go farm, you can get this recurve bow. And the reason why people use this recurve bow for a crit build is it has, on a hit on a weak spot, inflict bullseye on the target, and all weapons will get a crit rate of plus 30%. Remember, we're trying to build in the crit rate because more crit equals more shrapnel, equals bullets come back and more DPS. So what this means is we can put on our bow, we can hit a weak spot, which will be the head on the dummy. And this will give us 30% crit rate. You see nearly most of it is yellow. Well, it runs out. Personally, I only really use this when the weak spots are very easy to hit at certain stages with bosses. You can do that and you get a little bit of extra DPS. It's also really good because it does pair, like I said before, with the Cradle mods, which is this one. Tactical combo, weapon damage plus 25% for 4 seconds after switching weapons or reloading. So you switch from the crossbow, you get 25% for the tactical combo. And then you also got 30% crit rate. Very nice. All right, this is the confusing one, the Fateful Strike. I saw so many questions about this because a lot of builds have this in there. And it says, cannot deal weak spot damage, crit rate plus 8%, crit damage plus 25%. You can see why people are using this because it gives you an extra 8% crit rate and it gives you extra 25% crit damage. Pretty huge. But it says you can't deal weak spot damage. And as you know, we kind of need to deal weak spot damage with shrapnel to get this reloading. So why is this working and reloading? Well, what you'll see is you don't get weak spot bonus. So you can still hit the weak spot, but you don't get the bonus. So if I shoot the chest here, 565 is a normal shot. I shoot the head. Okay, that's a crit. That's a crit. That's a crit. Okay, come on. That's a crit. No. 565. Exactly the same. The weak spot is 565. The body was 565. It still shows a red number because it still counts as a weak spot hit, which means all your mods, including the crossbow, which needs a weak spot hit, including weapon shrapnel hits a weak spot, this all still counts. This all still triggers. You just don't get the weak spot damage bonus. I've seen a lot of sort of comments about that. Now, have I talked about where to get this? I'm going to tell you where to get the sets in a second. Let me just go through all the mods first, and then we'll go over the sets. Okay. The next I am using on the gloves, crit boost. It is a crit rate of plus 15%. Pretty huge. Once again, you want to look at where your armor mods are. You just go, oopsies. You just go find the silo that has the gloves and you farm level 50 until you get the golden gloves with the crit on them. Okay. Okay, the boots. Now, actually, I'm using Secluded Strike, but I think a lot of the builds right now are actually using Covered Advanced. And this says, taking no damage within 6 seconds grants 16% melee weapon and status damage for 30 seconds. So you get a 16% buff to your weapon damage for 30 seconds if you don't take damage. Mine I'm using, if no enemies are close by, I get 15% weapon and status damage. So if you try to nuke a boss from a little bit of a distance, you're going to get that. I've heard that this one is probably better, so that's probably what I'm going to farm for next. Now the jacket is often like defensive mods, so I actually only have a blue one here, which is just crit damage, just crit rate plus 2%, crit damage plus 12% on that one. And on the pants, I have dead shot. Each crit hit by non-melee weapons grants plus 4% crit damage and up to 36. The effect is removed the next reload. Cool. Oh. Up to 36%. So like, because I never thought of this, because I never reload, I'm going to be doing extra 36% on the crit damage. Okay, that works really well. No wonder why they have it in there. Right, so there are all the mods. Now the set that I have is all stuff that you can go and farm. A lot of the builds that I saw were actually using legendary gear in here. I wasted all my Starcom. I don't have enough to buy the sets that I want to buy anymore. People use I've seen lots of different stuff. I've seen the Lone Wolf set. Where is it? Lone Wolf has crit rate on it. So I've seen people use Lone Wolf. And I've also seen the Bastille set. Because they'll crouch down and you get 40% weapon damage. Stay crouching immobile for 0.5 seconds. That seems pretty big. 40% weapon damage. Right. So... but you don't need to do this, right? You can do this with the Falcon set because that gives crit damage. And all you need to do is go to your blueprints, you find the Falcon set, and it will tell you where to get it. It'll tell you how to get it. See, this is from Mystical Treasures in the Iron River. This is the Agent set frag, right? So you just need to have a look where the Falcon is and go grab them. And same with the Scout set. The reason I use the Scout is because it just adds some weapon damage. And the stats that I'm going for, remember, is... crit rate, crit damage. I'm not doing weak spot damage because I have this one on, which says can't deal any weak spot damage. And weapon damage, right? Now, I also saw a video, I think it was Thick Filler, that crit damage is additive with weak spot damage, but multiplicative with weapon damage. Meaning that you should put crit with weapon, and not crit with weak spot. Likewise, you should put weak spot, if you're doing a weak spot build, you should put weak spot with weapon damage, not weak spot with crit. I haven't tested it myself. Kind of interested to see what the numbers look like, but I think for simplicity's sake, a lot of people are going crit rate, crit damage, weapon damage. They're the order of the stats you want to collect. And then, of course, when you're cooking, you want to cook, and it's actually quite an easy recipe, canned meat. It only costs you salt, aluminum, and then whatever meat you want to put in. Remember, this changes the effects. The different meats you actually scroll through will change what it does. So like deer meat does stamina, beast meat, no special effects. Pork does 50 HP, which is pretty nice. Max stamina with rabbit meat. Goat meat restores HP slowly, and the canned meat in general will increase your shrapnel damage by 20%. Pretty nice. There's other stuff here, like you can increase your weapon damage by 15% with a bone-in deviated sausage, which is also pretty nice. So you can eat some food to help out with your damage. Similarly, the level of ammo you use will also make a huge difference. I didn't even notice this. I was watching these builds and I didn't realize I had tungsten ammo. I was like, oh, that's why I'm not doing some of that damage. Similar, like the meat, you can actually change some of these, and I think I already spoke about this, so I can put the electronic component in here. This is going to help out with the shrapnel damage, do even more damage for that using tungsten as well. For Deviants, a lot of people are using the Lone Wolf's Whisper because you get a 21.6% damage increase when your wolf attacks that enemy. Nice damage jumped on top. And finally, on the Cradle, Master Tactician. This is exactly why you see people throw Molotovs before they start doing damage. after using a tactical item, damage against great ones, which is bosses, 25% for 15 seconds. And then you have tactical combo, switching weapons or reloading weapons gives you 25% weapon damage, also very good. And then you have deadly combo after hitting a weak spot with bullet effects like bounce and shrapnel, bullet effect damage plus 25% for 3 seconds. So that should be proccing a lot because of this, right? Shrapnel weak spot hit weight plus 100%. So our shrapnel should be hitting weak spots all the time. And there you have it. I hope that it helps you reach some of those big damage numbers that you see all those YouTubers doing. I'm hoping it's going to help me too. I'm going to try to practice what I preach now and actually farm the right things, farm the right stats, get crit damage, get weapon damage, prioritize those things, level them up, and put in some tungsten bullets. Then actually see what it looks like going against a level 50 boss. I can do level 50 bosses solo with this current build. It's very possible you can do it, but it's not like melting them in 20 seconds flat like I've seen other people do. I'll see you next time with a perfected build, hopefully. If you'd like to support the channel and cannot think of a comment, you can just leave the words Shrapnel Build. As usual, it's been a pleasure. This is Myelin Games. Peace.